Next, I want to call Ross Edwards and Crypto Eddie to the stage. We're going to have a fireside conversation about financial services technology. And are either one of them in the room? Guys, why don't you come on up? Come to the stage. Ross Edwards from Ripple. Crypto Eddie, you know her, love her. Can't live without her. Welcome.
I'll sit here. Is this working? Yes. Definitely.
Hello again. I'm going to let Ross do an introduction, but it's really superb that we've got 3 speakers from Ripple at this event, plus a little support staff. Shout out to them as well. And I'm interested to hear this from Ross because different than the builders, he has a different perspective. And we'll go through some of those answers to some questions that have been prepared for you. So let me take a look. Yeah, so let's start with your backstory. I want to know if you can provide an overview of the journey. You should tell people how long your journey has lasted too with Ripple. You've been around. You're a Rippler for quite a lot of years. And with that, you've got a lot of experience in payments and blockchain space. So highlighting the different key roles you've had, that should be interesting for all of us to learn about. And what notable things you've learned along the way.
Yeah, okay, there's a lot in that. First of all, yeah, it's fantastic to be here. I was super excited when, I think Cheryl from Ripple reached out to me, about this happening. I think Ali and the Wave of Innovation team have done an awesome job. And to come here and meet some of the personalities, I see on YouTube and Twitter and, keep me excited about this space is truly amazing. So thank you, Eddie, and everyone else here as well. It's great to be able to participate. So I am Ross Edwards. At the moment, I lead our CBDC business here in APAC, so CBDC, central bank digital currencies. Sometimes a contentious topic, both in the financial world and the crypto world. And I also lead all of our engagements with central banks around the world. So I have project teams working, with central banks today. And, they're looking at using the technology as well as interest in the economic models of, tokenization right through to crypto around sovereign currency solutions. And so I have a team sort of looking at that. If I go back to sort of origins, it's very hard to cover an origin story after the bulls. My friend was buying pot with Bitcoin. Unfortunately, it's not that exciting. Prior to Ripple, so my academic background is in software engineering and maths. So funnily enough, the paper I did in maths was on elliptic curve cryptography, but David Schwartz still doesn't let me touch the core code. I worked, naturally, being an engineer and a mathematician, I went and worked for a consulting company when I got out of university. So I worked for Accenture for 12 years in financial services transformation. A lot of the very traditional stuff. So I worked across custody banking, trade processing, including FX markets. And more recently, or at the tail end of that, very focused on payment systems. So I was, re-architecting one of the large banks, here that everyone would know, their payment systems. And some of you would probably know, but the payment systems of banks are immense. There's like 100 systems involved in a payment sometimes, and it's a mess. And it feels like you're just fixing the same problem that was created off the last project, and you're making new compromises that the next guy is going to fix 5 years from now, and it's constantly fixing and patching and not really creating new services with a few exceptions. So as part of that work, I did some research in about 2014 into blockchain and crypto. And I wrote a paper for Accenture very early on this technology and this economic paradigm, which I really think you need to think about these two things separately. So I was very excited about that, and I've obviously focused on Bitcoin and Ripple, so I learned about Ripple. And I reached out to Ripple, the company, and I was pretty fortunate because they were opening up their first international office in Sydney, or wanted to. And I came on board as the first international employee back in 2015. So we opened here in Sydney, and we found out very quickly that it's very hard to run a business across Asia, South Asia, and the Middle East with a San Francisco head office out of Sydney. And now we have, I think there's 15 offices around the world. So I really came into Ripple as one of the very earliest people who come from a financial institution background. When I joined, it was very much a tech startup, a lot of open source, tech developers, a lot of ambition, as we know, a lot of excitement about the XRP ledger, and really just finding their way in how to bring that to the sort of mainstream financial institution space. And so I worked originally as what was called a business architect, which is a bit of a meaningless title, but I was defining how our solutions that incorporated the XRP ledger can be used by financial institutions. Importantly, how they work, but just as importantly, how they're different. What benefits do they provide? And so I spent a number of years doing that. We built out a broader financial institution engagement team. We worked with our product teams in developing those products that were turned into our payment solution and RippleNet. And I led the team, a global team called the Client Solutions team, that was defining these use cases and value propositions and business cases with banks and other financial institutions around the world. And in doing that, I looked at the technology and I wrote a paper internally around this could be used for broader currency issuance and domestic solutions. We're very focused on cross-border payments, less so on domestic solutions. And we think that the technology is equally applicable to that. And so I wrote that paper. Ripple established a CBDC team to look at this further and take this to market. And gradually I moved over and sort of led the engagement team around that. So that's sort of the history. I think first and foremost, I'm an XRP enthusiast, just as many of you are here. And it's a privilege to be able to work at Ripple and work on something that you love and are interested in every day. So
That's great. I like to hear that. I can imagine the journey that you've had has been exciting because the space has really evolved and it just gets better and better every day. The second question I have is, how has technology in this space changed? Yeah, this is kind of what I just was referring to because we've seen so many changes. And I think it was yesterday where we talked about 1 month in crypto is like 5 years or something, right? In legacy world. Things are moving so fast. So how has technology changed over the last 8 to 9 years that you've been with Ripple?
Yeah, so I think in many ways, particularly the crypto space, in the digital asset space, there was no digital asset space back then. It was just the crypto space. But it's almost unrecognizable, I guess, now compared to when I joined Ripple. I think the Bitcoin all-time high when I joined was something like $330. Of course, we didn't know that at the time that the future would hold. Ethereum hadn't launched, so I think Ethereum launched late 2015. It was a very niche sector, focused on a lot of speculative coins, and probably a lot of, I think the term degens was used earlier, but it was definitely viewed that way. It really was early days. Funnily enough, I looked at XRP Ledger, and I'm a person who works in financial institutions and financial solutions, and it had some really cool functionality that wasn't. I'd say it was kind of ahead of its time, right? So you could issue new currencies and new assets. This was very different to Bitcoin and most of the other projects out there. It had a working DEX, but it just wasn't being used. And we've seen huge changes in this space of building solutions on top of crypto and digital assets, and the huge emergence of DEXs, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit further as well, across different ecosystems and developments in that space. And I think looking at different types of assets that can be represented and how they can be represented has fully changed. So there's a lot in this space. On the tech space, there's so many toolings, obviously a lot of different ecosystems. I think that that's going to continue to evolve, and it's going to be easier and easier for technology people to build solutions on top of this technology. And that's what's needed to really build maturity in this space. So, I mean, I look back and it's hugely different, and it's honestly scary looking at that difference and wondering what the difference in the next 5 years will be.
I agree. The scariness it's an exciting scariness. It's really not clear and blurry, and especially with AI now. We're seeing, this is...
I mean, we've seen some of that yesterday with Futureverse. That stuff's amazing me, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah. In your experience, what are some of the most significant trends or developments that have shaped this space?
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on it before, but I'm still really fascinated in the uptake of decentralized exchanges. I think that's going to make... that is making and will be huge in the future. We're seeing, lots of different development in that space, a lot of innovation across different projects and different ecosystems. Obviously we've seen the AMM amendment go live over the weekend, and that's the start of something on XRP Ledger. We still need to build that up. We still need to, it's not just a technical solution. There's a market solution that needs to be built, but I think decentralized exchanges have really come a long way. I mean, we've seen, I think early last year, we saw Uniswap have greater volume than Coinbase as an example. And I think the other fascinating thing is when we saw the banking challenges, the 3 S's going down in 2022, centralized exchanges had a big problem. I don't know if anyone was watching their wallets on exchanges, etc., through that weekend and few days, but things were all over the place. And why were things? This is crypto. Why is it all over the place? It's the banking system that had the problem, and the problem is all of these these centralized exchanges are still tightly coupled with the banking system. People couldn't move US dollars around fast enough to actually service these markets, and it became a real problem. It became a real problem for us and our solutions because liquidity is king, and hence the importance of exchange. And I think if you look back to that period, the decentralized exchanges had a much more resilient, or acted much more resiliently than the centralized exchange infrastructure. And that's what's really needed for everyday life. I mean, if you're building solutions for the everyday person on the street or someone just trying to run their business, they don't understand that a bank on the other side of the world went down, which means US dollars isn't flowing, so the exchange is out of whack and I can't exchange my money, right? That's not an acceptable outcome. We need maturity in this space, and I think decentralized exchanges are an important step in building resiliency and building end-to-end solutions that actually make a difference to people's lives. I think the other area that's of topmost interest to me is the tokenization of different types of assets. And I find this fascinating through the whole stack, right? In CBDC, I work on CBDCs, but my work is mostly in what do you use CBDCs for, right? It's really not a challenge to technically produce a CBDC. The challenge is more in how it needs to interact with other things. And that inevitably goes to, interest in things like sovereign bonds and debt markets. And that's sort of one end of the market. We work with a lot of tokenization companies and private markets as well, right through to sort of gaming assets and these sort of areas. So different types of assets coming on the ledger, how they interact with different liquidity is really sort of fascinating to me.
Yeah, the use cases for CBDCs is much more than I think initially was talked about on rollouts. I think it's going to be quite wide. The next question is, can you cite some cross functionality that is being leveraged in the space that spotlights the emerging synergy? So for example, there's just a couple examples like custody combined with digital ID, compliant DeFi, which I think is going to be big in 2024, and use of wallets, etc.
Yeah, I mean, these are really important topics. I think there's a couple of different things. Yeah, one thing is, and we've talked about good proliferation of networks and this magical word that we use in the industry, interoperability. So I wanted to talk a little bit about interoperability first, because I think it's not a misunderstood word. It just means probably different things to different people. And I think where the future of interoperability will be is that an end-to-end solution, typically business solution, can use multiple systems and networks, and that solution will have the same properties or attributes as it was processed on one system. That means it doesn't have the friction of onboarding onto all these systems. It doesn't have the risk that's created in handoffs between these systems. Because make no mistake, whilst technology is great today, the internet's great today, there's still a lot of risk, particularly in financial processes, handing off. This is what creates cost. This is what creates latency. This is what creates unavailability of services. And, we talk about the unbanked in Africa, but there are plenty of businesses here that can't get loans. There are plenty of businesses here who can't get bank accounts. And so it's about accessibility to those services as well. So I think interoperability is really important. We're seeing some great movement in the space in XRP Ledger. I know Scott spoke about sort of Zahao and what Evernode's doing there. We heard a lot about the root network and these sort of pieces, and this is really important. I talk to central banks, all the time on this, and one position that I take is a system or a network that can do everything is never the best at anything, right? And we need best-in-class infrastructures. So I'm very much not of the opinion that the XRP Ledger is the perfect system for everything, but it's great for value, storing value, moving value, for liquidity. And I think interoperability will allow us to build solutions that uses the best attributes of XRP Ledger and takes in the best attributes of everything else. And an important part of that is centralized systems outside that. More broadly, what Ripple's aim really is, long-term, is being the infrastructure that enables other businesses to build on digital assets and this world, building out that infrastructure. We saw mid-last year, we acquired a company called Medico, so in custody infrastructure, which is a really important part of it. It probably highlights something I should have mentioned earlier. You talked about what's changed since I joined. When I joined, we were literally creating private keys using a two-person policy and post-it notes on a screen to hide bits of private keys. That was a custody solution back then, right? Now we have hugely advanced systems integrated with HSMs, and various other security stuff in the cloud that's really important. So it's bringing that together and making it seamless to use that with other tools across the ecosystem to be able to tap into liquidity and not having the businesses that want to build on top of this, and the builders, most importantly, not having to have them be experts in every piece of the ecosystem. If we can bring that to them, we can enable them, there's going to be a lot of value there, and it will grow both Ripple and the broader ecosystem in this space. So things working together and this integration of everything is topmost of mind.
We'll go to the next one, which is more about the XRP community. Yeah, XRP is unique, right? It's got a unique use case. It's started out bridging payments, but I think where the community now is looking towards is what other kinds of use cases do you think are there, not only for XRP, but let's just get a little wider. What are some of the other use cases for digital assets in general that have your attention?
So, I think there's building blocks that can build an infinite number of use cases. I think a really important building block, and you touched on it before, is decentralized identity. And that's something that we've been working on within Ripple, with the XRP Ledger community. I know there's an amendment out there on decentralized identity at the moment. It's highly related to the W3C sort of standards. So it's a great level of standardization in that space. And I think there's going to be a great opportunity for that to make a difference. And that can come together with these other pieces to build out, an infinite number of use cases. We've heard a lot, here over the last day or two, a lot that have inspired me, to be honest, that are, really meaningful to everyday life. I think where I spend most of my time is looking at the sort of financial services ends of things. I think probably the most interesting area is around tokenization. We talk about tokenization of real world assets, but in particular, looking at financial instruments and securities and how they can be better utilized. And so as an example, we recently did a pilot in Hong Kong with HKMA, where we had tokenized real estate, which is a hugely complex topic, much more than everyone appreciates, particularly in Hong Kong because of some of the history there. And we enabled tokenization of that and to push not the asset, but essentially a legal hold on the asset into a lending protocol to lend funds to users, or consumers who have property. Now, traditionally, particularly in the Hong Kong market, it's really hard to create liquidity from what is essentially an illiquid asset like a house. We worked with a bank there called Fubon Bank in Hong Kong, and I met up with the Fubon Bank CEO. And he was super excited about how this can connect to other financial processes. It's not just about creating the loan and getting money to the individual or the business, but for instance, how can the bank instantly package up these cash flows, so essentially these loans are cash flows for the bank. How can they package it up and offload that risk to another company's balance sheet, right? This is a sort of securitization that takes place. I know it's got a bad name somewhat since the GFC, but these are really important to maximizing the efficiency in the flow of capital around the market. And talking about this sort of securitization process, etc., I'm sure most of you are thinking that this is all mumbo jumbo that investment banking wankers talk about, right? But this really matters. This is driving, this is what drives risk and opaqueness in the system today. This is what stops people getting services, as I said before. This is what makes financial services expensive. This is what holds small businesses back and essentially makes them impossible sometimes. So this is going to make a real difference to everyday lives, to everyday people following their opportunities and having that opportunity to succeed. And I think the future very much is a very transparent space where capital can move instantly, securely, with certainty, not based off a heap of reconciliations at banks that you don't even know are involved in the process, that are charging fees, that are waiting 3 days because they've got to do their checks and balances. In the future, that will be instant, that will be transparent. It'll be a more level playing field, and I think that that's probably the area that excites me the most. Again, but I'm a bit of a financial services nerd sometimes.
Yeah, congratulations too. I think I just saw a couple of days ago, went into a phase 2 process for the Hong Kong.
Yeah, the HKMA have pushed forward with that. So yeah, we've been talking to them around that.
Yeah, that's good. I was happy to see that. What do you find unique and special about this XRP community?
Yeah, I mean, I joined and I joined from a very different world. We spoke about the history, working in banking and Accenture, the biggest consulting firm in the world. There's not a whole lot of community involvement, in that. So moving on to Ripple and working in the XRP ledger space, the XRP community was something extremely new to me. I remember jumping on the Skype channel when I first joined, and it was a truly revolutionary experience for me. It's been a long sort of journey, the last 9 years, almost 9 years with Ripple. And, there's been a lot of ups and downs. And I think the resiliency of the XRP community, astounds me. I think the passion, for XRP and XRP Ledger, and look, sometimes that passion is negative on certain things in Ripple, which is okay. I mean, I appreciate the passion about XRP and XRP Ledger, and I think we need to work with the community to sort of maximize that, which is why we're here. And so I see the crowd here. It's beyond enthusiasts. We just had the builder session. We see people building in this space. It is truly amazing to see. I think the other proof point, I think in December 2020, when the SEC dropped their Christmas present, Ripple, it was a lonely place for Ripple, but it wasn't a lonely place for long, right? And I think John and the community that he mobilized around that made the world, well, it made the difference, not just with respect to the case, but I think, to that long drawn out process. And, I think we've come out, we collectively with the cryptosphere have come out of that stronger than we went in. And so it's been a great silver lining. And I think the center of that, the key kernel of that is the XRP community.
I think this is our last question. What are some of the challenges facing this industry today? And I think, I'll just kind of push you in the direction that I'm looking for in terms of answer. Adoption, bad actors, all of the challenges that we do have. It's not a simple space, it's very complex. But I think from your perspective, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges we are facing?
I think a lot of these challenges will be highly related. I think you can't really go into this space, or I can't, and Ripple can't, without talking about regulations. Don't know if any of you followed Brad on Twitter, but I'd be very interested in the ratio or proportion of his tweets that are about regulatory and legal matters. I think it'll be extremely high. Obviously the US has been and continues to be a very challenging place. Regulation by enforcement and the opaqueness that is embedded there is a huge challenge and hugely detrimental, I think, to innovation in that space. But we've seen a lot of progress around the world, including here in Australia. Australia is not a leader, not bleeding edge on this space. We're learning from others, but we are progressing. So the Treasury, I think you heard from Bill yesterday, Treasury have started to put out consultations across really important spaces, right? How we regulate digital asset platforms, etc. And I know there's a crypto sort of maximalist view that it's down with the man and it's every man for himself on the blockchain, but regulations play a really important role, and this is a very important process to bring, bring the rest of the world along on this journey. And so we're seeing a lot of sort of progress in the regulatory space. Again, I encourage you to sort of follow Brad on Twitter if you want to hear lots more in that space. You talked about adoption, and we heard it yesterday. I think we need it to make it easier to access, easier to use. It is difficult to use still today, not as difficult as when I joined Ripple, but it still has its challenges. One of the big challenges in that space is, I'm a bit of a hacker, but I build in this space. Some things that are just second nature to me, remembering a seed phrase or securely keeping it somewhere, it's pretty natural to me. We need to continue to understand that doesn't, for 90% of the community, that's not really a viable sort of proposition. We recently did a real money project in Palau, and just getting people to remember a 4-digit PIN to be able to log into their wallet was a massive, massive challenge. So remembering 16 seed phrase words would be an interesting task. So I think adoption's led by usability, accessibility. There's also this sort of contradiction where we say, oh, well, they don't even need, or they shouldn't even know they're using a blockchain. They shouldn't even know that they're using XRP Ledger, which is extremely important. It is the case. If this is going to be successful, it will be the case. But you also need differentiation. If they don't know they're using XRP Ledger, then why is XRP Ledger the best? So we need to make sure we focus on still bringing what's good about the XRP Ledger and making that part of the user experience, which I think was encapsulated really well yesterday. But that's not just applicable to the gaming space and other spaces we spoke of. The financial space, the space that we work in, is equally important. That's a lot of our job in working with financial institutions that aren't natively thinking about digital assets and crypto. That's not their background. So I think usability is really important. I think the really hot topic at the moment in Australia is scams. And these are not special crypto scams. Sure, I mean, crypto has its own flavor of things, including scam bots of Brad and various other people in the team asking for XRP. Do not send them XRP, but Brad does not need your XRP. But scams are a huge point. And part of the challenge is that I think the crypto and digital asset space quickly becomes a scapegoat for the financial industry a little bit. You know, banks are like, ooh, don't worry about us. The scams are all in the crypto space. You know, scams are not a crypto problem. They're not even a financial services problem. They are a community problem. And so I think, you know, we need progress in that space. And we are dependent on others, not just the crypto area to help with that. So I'm hoping to see progress in that space. All of those things really important, but I do think, you know, most importantly, the future is bright. The future is inevitable. It's about how we get there and you know, building things we're passionate about and, you know, things that make a difference to people out there in the world.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Russ. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.